why you're lost and what you can do about it. Almost every one of us, at some point, feels lost, not geographically, but existentially. It's that quiet, persistent feeling that you're drifting through life, following a script you never agreed to, chasing goals that don't satisfy, and becoming someone you barely recognize. You might be surrounded by people, checking off achievements, growing older, but inside, there's a gnawing question: what am I even doing here? If you've ever asked yourself that, this is for you. Because being lost is not a failure, it's an invitation. And as Carl Jung once said, life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you are just doing research. But what if you could begin that life now by finding yourself? Let's not sugarcoat this. Most of us are lost because we were never taught how to be found. From childhood, we're trained to become what others want, not who we are. We're told what success should look like, what happiness must include, what kind of person is worthy of love, and we internalize it all without question. We're not encouraged to explore who we really are. We're encouraged to conform, to please, to adapt. So we build these outer identities: the achiever, the good son or daughter, the hard worker, the reliable friend. And yet, beneath those identities, the real self remains buried, unseen, unheard, and increasingly distant.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Every time you make a choice to please others at the expense of your own truth, you reinforce that distance. Every time you ignore your intuition because it conflicts with what's expected, you participate in your own disappearance. And what's terrifying is that this process is so gradual, so subtle, that you can reach adulthood having never truly met yourself. You become a stranger within your own story. You wear masks so well, so often, that you forget you're wearing them. But here's the deep insight that might change everything. Feeling lost is the first step to becoming found. It is the soul's rebellion against a false life. It's the psyche's alarm bell, alerting you that you've wandered too far from your center. It's painful, yes, but it's also sacred, because it means you still have the capacity to return to yourself. And that return is what Carl Jung devoted his life to understanding. Jung called it individuation, the process by which a person becomes whole, not by adding on layers, but by peeling them away. It's not about becoming something better. It's about becoming you, fully, without distortion, without apology. But to do that, you must first face the parts of yourself you've ignored, denied, or abandoned. And that's where most people stop. Because the journey inward is not easy. It demands honesty. It demands courage. And most of all, it demands that you give up the comfort of pretending. But let's ask something deeper. What exactly are you pretending to be? Who are you performing for? And what would happen if you just stopped? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're spiritual detonators. Because the moment you begin to question the framework of your life, you begin to reclaim agency. You realize that just because the world told you who to be doesn't mean you have to keep obeying. You realize that the opinions of others are not instructions. That failure to live up to someone else's expectations is not failure, it might actually be freedom. Now, let's ground this in something practical. If you feel lost, don't try to find yourself by chasing another external goal. That's a trap. Instead, begin subtracting. Start noticing what feels false, what drains you, what requires you to act. These are clues. Your real self doesn't need a stage, it needs space. It doesn't need applause, it needs attention. And the only way to give it that attention is by turning inward. That might mean journaling, not the polished kind, but the raw, ugly, honest kind, where you admit things you've never said out loud. It might mean sitting in silence, without distraction, and letting your thoughts wander until the suppressed truths start surfacing. It might mean walking away from roles, relationships, or routines that are comfortable but dishonest. These are not small steps. They are seismic shifts, but they are how a real life begins. And here's the paradox Jung understood better than anyone. You can't become whole by avoiding the dark. You become whole by walking into it, by facing the shadow, the part of you that holds your fear, your guilt, your shame, your repressed desires, and realizing it's not your enemy. It's your map. The shadow contains everything you've rejected about yourself, and until you integrate it, you'll stay divided, lost, half alive. So if you're lost, take this seriously. Don't numb it, don't dismiss it, because lost is not the end. It's the beginning. It's the signal that the old life is cracking, and the real one is waiting. Will you listen? In the next part, we'll explore the hidden architecture of the self, the ego, the shadow, the persona, and how these inner forces shape your decisions without you even realizing it. You'll learn how to identify the false self you've built and begin the process of breaking free. The prison of persona, how your ego keeps you chasing a life that isn't yours. If you ever feel like you're living someone else's life, it's not your imagination, it's your persona. Carl Jung described the persona as the social mask we wear to navigate the world. It's the version of you that knows how to smile when you're exhausted, nod in agreement when you silently disagree, and perform competence even when you're drowning. It's not inherently bad, in fact, we need a persona to function. But problems begin when you forget that it's a mask. When you start believing the role is the reality. When the ego, your internal manager, becomes so invested in maintaining the image that it silences everything raw, real, and unfinished inside you. The ego wants order. It wants control. And above all, it wants to be seen as successful, secure, and acceptable. So it builds a life that fits those desires. It pushes you to pursue things not because you love them, but because they'll make you look good. It urges you to suppress your vulnerability, because vulnerability looks weak. It convinces you that your worth is directly tied to what others think of you. And slowly you begin to shape your days, your goals, your friendships, even your emotions around maintaining the persona. You become imprisoned by your own image. But here's the irony: the more you invest in the persona, the more disconnected you become from your actual self. You can win awards, gain followers, climb ladders, and still feel empty. Why? Because the persona can't feel. It's a mask. It can impress, but it can't connect. And the deeper truth is this: you cannot be loved for who you are if you're always performing. You can only be loved for the mask. And somewhere inside you know it. That's why praise often feels hollow. That's why success doesn't satisfy, because it's not reaching the real you, it's bouncing off the surface. So how do you break free? You start by observing. Watch your own behavior like a scientist. Ask, when do I feel the need to perform? When do I withhold my truth to protect my image? Who am I trying to impress, and why? These aren't easy questions, but they're the doorway to freedom. Because once you start identifying the persona, you create space for something deeper to emerge. But here's the catch: letting go of the persona doesn't mean becoming reckless or unfiltered. It means becoming integrated. It means aligning your outer life with your inner truth. And that process will often feel like death, because ego death is real. The version of you that's been driving your life will resist, panic, and try to reassert control. It will whisper. If you stop pretending, they'll leave. If you show who you really are, you'll lose everything. But those are lies. The truth is, the only things you'll lose are the things that were never truly yours to begin with. The ego is terrified of rejection, but your soul is not. Your soul doesn't need to be understood by everyone. It doesn't crave applause. It craves authenticity. It craves connection with people who see you not the curated version, but the real you, the complicated you, the evolving you. And those connections are only possible when you stop performing and start revealing. So ask yourself this: what would I say, create, or change if I wasn't afraid of being judged? That question has the power to rewrite your entire life. Because when you answer it honestly, you begin to dismantle the prison of persona. You begin to live from the inside out, not the outside in. And that shift is where true power begins. In the next part, we'll go deeper into what Jung called the shadow, the parts of yourself you've rejected or hidden, and why facing those dark corners is the only way to become whole. You'll learn how to confront the uncomfortable truths you've buried, and why your greatest strength may be hiding in the very parts of you that you were taught to fear. Meeting the shadow, why wholeness requires you to embrace what you've repressed. Most of us spend our lives trying to be good sons, good daughters, good partners, good citizens. We strive to be kind, productive, respectable, and in control. But beneath that polished surface lies something we rarely talk about, something darker, messier, and far more human. Carl Jung called it the shadow. It's everything we repress, reject, and deny about ourselves. It's the anger you suppress because you were taught it's dangerous. The envy you hide because it's ugly. The desires you don't admit even to yourself because they don't fit the image you've built. The shadow is not evil. It's simply the parts of you that your conscious mind, the persona, and ego have labeled unacceptable. And the tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives running from it. But here's the truth: you cannot become whole if you reject half of yourself. You cannot find meaning, peace, or authenticity while pretending that certain emotions, thoughts, or impulses don't exist. The shadow doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It grows stronger in silence. It leaks out in your sarcasm, your self-sabotage, your passive aggression, your irrational fears. It influences your choices behind the scenes, shaping your relationships, your work, your beliefs. And until you face it consciously, you are not free. You're divided, fragmented, lost in a war with yourself. Jung believed that real transformation begins when we stop trying to be only good and start trying to be whole. That means walking into the parts of ourselves we've been taught to fear. It means asking, what am I unwilling to admit about myself? What emotions terrify me? What truths have I buried because they threaten my identity? These questions are not comfortable, but they are sacred, because the shadow is not just darkness, it's potential. Inside your shadow is your creativity, your intensity, your wildness, your passion, your intuition. The very qualities that make you powerful are often the ones you were told to suppress. Think about it. How many times have you held back your voice because you didn't want to seem angry, even when anger was justified? How many times have you downplayed your ambitions because you didn't want to appear arrogant? How many times have you hidden your grief, your lust, your confusion, because those feelings didn't match the image you were trying to project? Every act of suppression deepens the shadow, but every act of honest confrontation brings you closer to liberation. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse. It means acknowledging that those impulses exist and understanding where they come from. It means making peace with your humanity, the full spectrum of it. Because when you own your shadow, it loses its grip on you. You stop being ruled by what you refuse to see. You stop projecting your disowned parts onto others. You stop fearing yourself. And something miraculous happens. You begin to feel whole. Not perfect, not always calm or happy, but real. Alive. Grounded. You discover a kind of strength that can't be faked, the strength of someone who knows themselves deeply and is no longer afraid of their own reflection. That's when life begins to change, not because the world shifts, but because your relationship to yourself does. In the final part, we'll explore the ultimate truth Jung pointed toward, that finding yourself isn't about self-improvement or becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you've always been. You'll learn how to live from the soul, not the ego, and how to create a life that is not just successful, but meaningful. The return to soul, how to stop striving and start living a life that's truly yours. After all the masks, all the striving, all the chasing of identities that were never truly ours, what remains? If you've made it this far in your journey, you've likely begun to sense that the answer to your lostness was never out there. It was never in the job, the title, the relationship, the image. Those things may hold value, but they cannot replace the soul. And that's where Carl Jung's final invitation becomes clear. To return to the soul is to remember who you are beneath the noise. It's not a task of becoming. It's the sacred act of remembering. Remembering the quiet voice that was drowned out by expectations. Remembering the inner compass that was ignored for the sake of approval. Remembering the self you were before the world told you who to be. The soul doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't demand attention. It waits for it. But when you finally sit still long enough to listen, you realize something profound. The soul never left. You did. You abandoned your own depth in exchange for survival, for recognition, for a sense of belonging that was always conditional. But the soul is unconditional. It holds all of you, the light and the shadow, the joy and the suffering, and it asks only one thing: stop running. Be here. Be real. Living from the soul is not about escaping life's pain. It's about meeting it with presence. It's about choosing truth over comfort, depth over distraction, and meaning over performance. It's about building a life that aligns with your values, your rhythms, your nature, not someone else's version of success. And here's the paradox: the more you live from the soul, the less you need to prove. You stop striving because you realize there's nothing to earn. You were already enough. You always were. You just forgot. But this kind of life demands courage, because when you choose to live from the soul, you will lose certain things. You'll lose false friendships that were based on your persona. You'll lose ambitions that once felt important but now feel hollow. You'll lose the comfort of fitting in, but in their place you gain something far more valuable: integrity, peace, depth, a sense of home within yourself. You begin to experience relationships based on truth, not transaction. Work that reflects your essence, not just your skill. And a quiet joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, but on congruence, on being in alignment with who you really are. So ask yourself, with full honesty, what would my life look like if I stopped striving to become someone, and instead allowed myself to be who I already am? What habits, roles, and expectations would I release? What truths would I finally honor? What parts of me are still waiting to be seen, not fixed? This is not self-help. This is soul work. And it's not something you finish, it's something you return to again and again. Each time you get lost in the noise, you find your way back through stillness, through honesty, through deep listening. That's the real journey, not the climb upward, but the descent inward. That's where life truly begins. Carl Jung wasn't offering a philosophy, he was offering a path back to yourself. And if you're willing to walk it, not only will you stop feeling lost, you'll realize you were never truly lost at all. You were simply being called home.